Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. Welcome to KIMEcast. Tony Mikla.
I'm Russ Dunning.
Evan Hogger.
So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about our training experiences from our development from our youth onward, and probably what led us into this profession, at least in my case for sure, what led me to this profession was my training. And a lot of my good buddy pushing me when I was younger, and a lot of things that we did was a lot of fun. And looking back on it, kind of did that make sense and did it not make sense for me specifically? And then these guys telling their stories as well, which I think you'll find interesting. So, but before we get started here, Evan, what are we drinking here?
We are drinking, this is called the No Hands West Coast IPA. It's from Crooked Lane Brewery in Auburn. And this is a gift from Amy Newton, who's brought us the Dari screening device that we've been using in our Sacramento location for the last month and a half.
Sweet. Let's do it. All right. So my training history, when I started, so basketball has been my sport for most of my life. I played just about everything up until, I remember, I guess 7th or 8th grade. Baseball, football, basketball. Ended up playing golf in high school a little bit. But my buddy was a super workout fiend. So he was kind of motivated me a ton to be into fitness, which I wasn't necessarily a massive fan of in all reality. I've always been a better endurance-based athlete and can do something for longer periods of time, never the most explosive or powerful person out there, where he was built a little more of the opposite. So he loved training, loved working out. Yeah, he did it in his own house. They had some weight equipment and such. But then we got to a point, we were sophomores in high school, we got to a point where he joined the racket club. It was a swimming racket club in our community. And he's like, hey, we got to do it. We'll go at 5:30 every morning and work out before school. We had 7 o'clock PE, so we'd go 5:30 and work out, go home, shower real quick, and then we head to school for 7 a.m. PE and do that. And whatever, it was crazy. But I was like, oh my God, what am I doing at 5:30 in the morning working out? But he was just never missed a day. This is what we're doing. We're going for it. And he'd always push me in the weight room. I actually learned a ton from him because how motivated he was, how much he read about it and things, which is great. So that was a lot of fun. Certainly taught me a lot about strength training. I did get stronger from the experience. That was really good. We didn't do anything totally stupid. So looking back, I could say that we still did a lot of good stuff. Probably a little too much focus on bench press, but when you're 16 in high school, that's what you do. You know what I mean? So
you still need a date.
Curls and bench were still part of the process. I do remember this breaking moment though in my mind. This is pretty funny. So when I ended up at Arizona, and I got there during the summertime before school started, I went into the weight room, the basketball weight room, and it was all sports at that point. So I go in there and I was like, I'm just gonna get a workout in. I remember the coach's name was Dan Worth, and Dan came up and he's like, hey, he goes, what are you up to? He's like, I'm just in town early. I just want to get a lift in and get going. He goes, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I'll just do my own thing. I'm just gonna do some bench, do some curls, do some rows, whatever. And he's like, what are you gonna do for your legs? And I'm like, I play basketball, so I'll just use my legs all the time. You just don't need to really work out the legs. And he kind of looked at me funny, like, okay, we're gonna kick your ass. And now I find myself making every program for anyone that I'm working with is leg only, and then the arms are kind of just for fun at the end, right? It's kind of the candy part of it. So, and then I think in the movie Miracle, the legs feed the wolf is the way that goes. But the legs definitely drive the force, drive the power. So, any recommendations I would have beyond that front. But that was a moment of truth for sure. I was like, all right, clearly I've been doing the wrong thing for the last 4 years. This is going to be great. So, but yeah, it's good. So that's kind of what got me kind of interested in fitness and that and obviously seeing it transfer into success on the court and playing. It was definitely an advantage to have that kind of strength to support and go against in a context where basketball against other guys, and having that physicality was huge. Because I think I was 135 pounds at the time, probably 5'10", 135. So it's definitely a presence on the court, that's for sure. I think I may have crossed 170 as I entered college. So, but that's why I preferred to stay on the 3-point line and stay on the periphery, and there was a little less contact out there.
And when you shoot like you do, it works.
It's worth more.
Now,
Yeah.
when you were shooting from the 3-point, I think you probably had some hops. Now, how did you develop those hops?
No, you don't have to jump.
No, you just
have a
need
nice
space.
set shot. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
just
just
need
but,
space.
but,
You gotta get
but I'm thinking about the
separation.
calf propulsion off the ground. How did you get that?
I didn't get it.
What
He's
about
alluding to a
about
shoe
What
here.
about the shoes you wore, Tony?
Oh, the shoes. Yeah. So we did have a period of time, which, if you guys remember, strength shoes was a thing. So my buddy, of course, he got jump soles because he couldn't afford strength shoes, so he got the jump sole. I think maybe he got strength shoes first and broke them. I can't remember, but he got them. And then, he's all into them, and he's like, you got to get them. And it was like, I still remember, it was like $110. I went to my parents, I'm like, hey, it's $110, get this. It was really impressive. So you get the strength shoes, which were awesome. Strength shoes were like a shoe that had this big pad on the toe box. So the only thing that touched the ground were your forefoot, basically the pads of your foot, your arch and your heels were always off the ground. And then what was genius, though, they did an amazing job looking back at this. When was this? This was like 94, 95. So they give you a full, everything was in print because the internet just started at this point. So they mailed you this packet in print, and it was all color coded, and there was like a 7 or 8 week training program, and each week was a different color and had all the exercises listed on it and how frequently to do them. So I remember being out there in my street doing bounding and A skips and lateral shuffles and exactly as the paper said, man. Like Casey Weather said, man, it's on the paper, that's what I'm doing. So followed the paper to a T, maybe jumped an inch higher. But the process was genius. Looking back on it, it was still certainly impactful and a lot of the right stuff. A lot of
The
stuff
right drills, maybe the
lot-
wrong shoes.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do it in strength shoes really,
Yeah.
but definitely doing the right stuff, and it motivated me to go do the drills, which I probably wouldn't have done in regular
that's true.
shoes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't seen the carryover.
Uh-huh.
But we were obsessed with trying to dunk at this point in our life. That was what everything was about: is how could we dunk? Because that was the cool thing to do.
How close
This
did you
was the
get?
Jordan era.
Jeez, yeah. Did
I
you
could
get there?
dunk a tennis ball.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I know. I've gone downhill quite a bit.
That's better than me. I think I tried to do that recently. Can't even get close anymore.
Yeah. Sad. Yeah. Sad day.
I think it's so critical about youth, though. I mean, on a real level, you have to have a goal as a youth, and trying to dunk. I think that's it. Like you need something that you can't do to be able to train hard and get there. For me, as I told in a prior podcast, I lost depth perception when I was 11, so I officially sucked at every sport that I was playing at the moment. And the only thing I could do was basically do martial arts and train in the gym. And so I learned how to train in the gym because that occupied like the other half of my time. And my training partner was my martial arts instructor, so that worked pretty well. So we loved in the martial art world back in the 90s, 80s and 90s. It was kind of in that, like Chuck Norris was still a really big thing. Bruce Lee is still a big thing, but Bruce Lee was big. Chuck Norris was big. So high level kicking was really fun, and it felt acrobatic and athletic. So I was always kind of in a kicking mindset, and I actually got good at squats early on because squats helped me jump higher, so that I could jump higher, kick people in the head. So I got underneath the bar probably like the age of like 14, started doing squats. By the time I was 15 and a half, I was able to squat like over 300 pounds as a person who weighed like 140. And it allowed me to really kind of fly. Now, I never really tried to dunk because I wasn't interested in things that require depth perception. But I loved running. And then for some reason, it was cool in Taekwondo back in the 90s to put a whole bunch of kids in a row, and they kind of duck down, and then you jump over them and kick shit. I don't know why that was a thing, but I think that's what martial art movies were. Van Damme did it, and Steven Seagal tried to do it, and but whatever. So it was always like the coolest thing of like, well, how many people can you jump over? So I would squat 300 pounds, and I would go run and jump and do like a flying kick and try and kick something. And but that got me going. That got me going with trying to see. I'd work on the splits because at that time I'd watch Bloodsport, and so if Van Damme could do the splits, then I'd do the splits. So I got. So if you got the jumping shoes, I got the stretcher, and I got that thing
That was a
that
big
cranks.
thing.
Yeah. So open up into a V.
My buddy had one of those, by the way.
Of course,
yeah.
of course.
He was
What
into
house
it.
didn't? And you get into a V and you start cranking and crying and cranking and crying, and you crank it to the end so your legs are split into a V doing the side splits, and you hold it there for a while, and you just crank again, and it was brutal. But I got really good at kicking in the head. I was I'm not sure if I can do it anymore without hurting something, but that really got me going. And you do jump rope and squats and jumping jacks, and you jump over things. And it's funny how you look back at it, but it was tying together a strength drill to a neuro drill. Also, because the cool thing about running and jumping over people is you really don't want to miss. Because if you land on them, that sucks. Then you lose them as a partner. They don't want to get ducked anymore. So you really don't want to land on people when you jump over them. At least from my experience.
I see this in your practice. For years, you keep bringing this concept back. I mean, I think every fighter you've worked with has to jump over certain things to graduate.
That's a great point.
Usually boxes.
Boxes or hurdles or chairs. He's gotten creative.
I remember when I first met him, like, Russ, if they're going to jump over a hurdle, just make sure they don't hit it. Because if they tear their ACL jumping the hurdle, that's going to be a problem. Okay?
Yeah.
He's like, no, he'll be good. I'm like, okay, because those jumps are gnarly, bro.
Yeah.
But jump over tables, jump onto tables.
Because
Usually they're soft structures is what we've moved to.
when we moved to, it's been a lot less holding your breath moments, and but there's something to be said for that adage of well, jump as far as you can. Okay, you think that was as far as you can? Jump over that, and there's that dance of fear, like, oh, what if I don't do it? And that's what excites you to do something that you didn't think you could do.
There's some cool stuff there. I think just natural motivation too. Look at kids do this all the time. Right, how far can you jump? And they look to compete with each other. How fast can they run? Those natural competitions that people have are good things to tap into in the training world when you're working with them.
I think what's cool about both of you guys too, that it happens so much less now and didn't happen when I was going through this, was what you guys did was relatively self-guided. So you guys self-motivation, self-guided. You went and sought out what you wanted. You bought a pair of shoes and you went and found your martial arts instructor, and you guys were taking on this journey from there. For me, by the time, significantly younger than you guys, so by the time by the time I was getting to that same age, that getting into high school age, it seemed like everything was carved out for you, right? So I played baseball, and if I played baseball, I had to do X, Y, and Z. I had all these things I had to do. There was no longer me getting to kind of figure out what works for me or what I want to do. So I show up to high school, my freshman year, and I'm a really tall, lanky kid. I probably have not grown much in height since then. I've filled out in other ways, but I probably haven't grown much in height since then. So I was a tall kid, and I remember the varsity baseball coach was this big dude, giant, barrel-chested guy with tiny little twig legs. He always walk around like he had a stick up his you-know-what. And I remember him saying, "Oh, you transfer?" And I was like, "Nope, freshman." He's like, "All right, stick with me today." And I was like, "Okay, this is interesting." So he had me work out in the fall and in the winter with the varsity baseball team. And these guys they're seniors in high school. They've been training for 4 years. They looked very different than I did, but I went through the same training program as them. And I remember it was aggressive. It was not a well-written program looking back on it now. Very aggressive, adding weight every single day, every single week, adding. There was never a periodization or a deload phase. It was always up, up, up. And I remember with the back squat specifically, we added, and I got to a point, my freshman year in high school, I'd never touched a barbell before this. Freshman year in high school, I'm back squatting 340 pounds. Wow. By December or January, this does not work out. So maybe, but this does not end well for me. So I remember specifically, we get to this max day, right? And I'm going through this max lift. And all these seniors are red in the face yelling at me, and I'm like grinding through this lift, and I feel this very weird thing in my back, and I'm like, oh, that's not normal. But I finish the lift anyway, rack it, and I step out of there, and as you know, before I don't actually pass out, you feel like you're gonna pass out, I walk away, and I'm like, something's not quite right. And so I fractured a vertebrae in my back, so I ended up with essentially a stress fracture, one of those lumbar pars fractures. It was a significant problem. So we talk about training. I think I fell into this guided path that did not work out well initially. And so there's a few months to heal from that and play the year. And at the end of that year, so I played the whole spring season, played the whole summer season. And then in fall, I was still in quite a bit of pain, my parents were like, okay, we got to do something about this. So I go to a doctor and go to this like Kaiser PT. It wasn't Kaiser, but it was the equivalent of that in Seattle where I grew up. And they're putting electrodes on me and doing this stuff and having me lay on my back and like march my legs. And I'm like, well, I was just squatting 345 pounds. It didn't work out, but this doesn't seem like it gets me back to that. I didn't really know. It didn't seem like it got me back to that. And so wasn't changing, wasn't getting better. And through the grapevine of the travel baseball world, we heard about this guy. He wasn't a physical therapist. He had no medical degree. He was a strength and conditioning coach. His name was Dan Potts. He ended up being a big mentor of mine. So my parents could only afford to get me to him once a week. So I'd go work out with him once a week, and then I would go volunteer at his gym and hang out, and then do the workout that he had for the guys there when they were done. So I'd like clean everything and rack the weights and load the stuff up on another day. So I was there 2 days, and then I'd go do something on my own that he would help me kind of write up. And what like amazed me immediately when I got there was I probably touched a barbell, a handful of times when I was there, but it was medicine balls and dumbbells and kettlebells, and it was all like very dynamic movements and things that made complete sense when applied to baseball. Like we would take those like Kaiser cable machines and we'd be ripping them into rotation. We'd be launching med balls over our head. We'd be goblet squatting dumbbells, and we did a lot of dumbbell snatches, things that made tons of sense to me, but I never had to touch 345 pounds. Felt my back was never a problem again. He ended up being a very, very good mentor of mine. We've kept in contact over the years, but it was kind of a like tale of two stories there. This like very poorly written thing that I was like thrown into, and then this other thing that kind of like you guys were, I was like kind of drawn to it. It's like just makes sense.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing how, when I was growing up, there was no place to go like train for sports. My story was very independent, where me and my buddy would go and do our own thing, and then we were doing our own strength shoes workouts, and we were using weights very much on our own accord. And we did do some preseason work as a team in high school. There was I guess it was probably like September, October. We had like a 2-month window where we could train, and we did have access to the weight room, and our coach would take us to the workouts. And that was more traditional lifting stuff, we did squat there, we'd bench press, we'd do a lunge, simple things. We didn't do anything crazy. And that was good. My buddy Nick pretty much led the workout for the whole team because he was so passionate about it, motivating everybody. And we had some sticks on the team, so there were people just bench pressing bars, and it was pretty light at that time. But yeah, we did a bit of it, and then we also had a conditioning day where we'd go on the conditioning day and we'd do box jumps and we'd do quick feet work and things of that nature. So I think we're on the right track. Did a lot of good stuff, I have to say. Our team was horrible, and our attendance to those of workouts was very, very poor. So of the 15 guys in the team, we might have had 5 at each of those things, and of course, Nick and I were there at all of them.
That's kind of traditional in the basketball world, though, right?
Yeah, we're not a real good workout group.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was good. I learned a lot from it. But I think it's totally changed now. Now it's...
and now what I described is like on steroids. Like these kids, their whole calendar year is planned out and mapped out for them.
Yeah.
Even if they're playing another sport, it's all very, specifically tailored. And you could go to, just in our greater Sacramento area, there's more than a handful of places you could go to get that done. Yeah, it's everywhere.
So our martial arts gym at the time, we were known for, not to brag, but... Yeah, brag. That's what I'll brag. We would go to every open tournament, and our students would crush all sparring. So it was back in the points days, not really kind of UFC days. Actually, UFC was taking off in its infancy, but nonetheless, we would crush all the competition. And if you looked at our sparring training, it was insanely conditioned focus. So it was so conditioning focused that I remember vividly one workout where I went for 5 different sparring partners. So it was a 5-minute spar and then a 1-minute rest, and then you change partners, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and do it again. So it came out to about 30, 35 minutes of very aggressive sparring, which for a pro fighter, they would actually call that a fight sim. And at the time, I was a secondary black belt. I was pretty skilled, pretty fast. I was going up against older guys than me, faster guys than me, and I had hit such a sympathetic overdrive load that I had a panic attack, And I didn't know what a panic attack was at that point. All I know is that my heart rate was not coming down. So when I was done, my breathing maintained. I started hyperventilating. I couldn't relax, and my body was kind of stuck. It felt like I was on AFib, you know. And it took me, I think, the better part of like 30 minutes for me to calm down. And it took a lot of kind of coaxing from my instructor to just calm my nerves, because I was in such a sympathetic state. And it was combined of just as much fitness conditioning exercise as it was sparring intensity, and that that fear and excitement of hitting and get hit. And what I remember back of those days is Friday nights were always sparring night, black belt sparring night. And when we went, it was you were going to leave just crushed. Every bit of energy was just left there, and nothing was at that time. It wasn't this high intensity. It wasn't a max lift. It wasn't hyper programmed. It was just come Friday night, and you were going to get your mind right. And it was magical looking back at it. And now I think back, and I know that's what a lot of sports miss, and a lot of development programs miss, is conditioning at a raw level to make people better than who they are, and to become better from a conditioning standpoint. And it's hard. And with the pro level, very few sports will kind of go into that too deep because they don't want to hurt people. And in the youth development, we're kind of stuck in this like showcase land of you always got to be at your best. And at that raw development phase, you get something out of it that's special. And to find training zones and training and coaches that can take you there, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say safely, because it might not be anything safe about it, but it's special and it does something. But that's when I lived, and that's when I flourished.
Yeah. For our conditioning program, in basketball we ran with cross country team in the preseason. So that was genius.
Nice.
For sure. Makes a ton of sense. I don't know why we didn't do that sooner. I mean, we don't still do that now. But we'd go off and run. I remember the longest run was 7 miles. Which is that was a lot. 42 minutes though, so that was actually pretty impressive looking back. But nonetheless, it was like,
that is impressive. That's 6-minute miles, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boston Marathon pace.
Yeah, that's moving.
Yeah, no, it got good at the wrong thing. That's what that means. But I remember this is where I started to see this idea of this jogging versus running thing. Is that I'd be my buddy who was the power guy, like I was telling you about. We'd go to the endurance running part of our workouts, and he'd be the last one, and he's shuffling, and I'm like, how are you running so slow? It's so inefficient. I can't run that slow. It's actually harder for me to run this pace. I have to run faster. This is ridiculous. So I would, and then I'd finish early, and then he'd finish relatively late with all the other guys just shuffling their feet for the whole distance. I'm like, God, if you guys just ran, it'd be way easier for you. Which I've proven in my lifetime is actually true. So I'm happy to say that and state that. But that was pretty interesting. We did a ton of conditioning that way. We should have done much more of a sprint and change in direction work and everything. It's pretty interesting. But I wish that we had today's day and age, and I never did martial arts, so I don't have a bias towards it at all, but I love the disciplinary factor of it, and I love the focus, and I certainly love the body awareness piece that I think is developed in young men. And I think the same thing in gymnastics is true with young women typically, is that there's great discipline, great body awareness development, great kind of plyometric, explosiveness development. I'm not sure that I support it beyond the age of 12, but in both cases I think it's a great youth developmental tool.
The self-driven kind of goal nature of it, the belt, you said your 2nd degree black belt, right? So you're always working towards this next level, and you're not doing it with anybody else. It's your own kind of self-driven path that you've got to be on. I think there's definitely something to that that's missed in the team sport environment for sure. Yeah. In the team sport environment, for me, conditioning was always punishment. Yeah. That was always just, something goes wrong, you make 3 errors in this game, you guys miss this many shots, or turn the ball over, this and that. It's we're going until 2 people puke or something. It was conditioning was always punishment. It was a dreaded thing. That was never part of the training plan. It was always a consequence for something that went wrong in a practice or in a competitive environment.
Yeah, I went to Jesuit high school during their football heyday under Coach Dan Carmazzi, and when it was conditioning. Every summer double days was conditioning, and you would just you just knew to drink a lot of water. The chance of you throwing up was high. And we would do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, there and back, 100 yards, 100 back. And you do that at a certain time. And everyone had to hit at a certain time, do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. And inevitably, people got in shape. But it was absolutely brutal. And at that time, we were dominant. No one else could beat Jesuit at that during those days. And for good reason, because smart programming, smart lifting, and man, we conditioned.
And if you watch all those like sports movies, those feel-good sports stories where it's the team that's not very talented from a rough area and they go play all these other teams and win and they end up in some championship game they're not supposed to be in, the coach is always kind of like pictured as kind of a hard ass, and he's always like, well, we're going to be the best. If we're not the best players, we're going to be the best conditioned team. And they always say that. We're going to be the best conditioned team. Mm-hmm. And then they always play like some fast-paced basketball game and then they end up winning. So yeah, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
I was going to say something about that. When I coached in junior high, when I was playing football, our football coach was awesome. He was a huge inspiration for me. He's a great guy. And in our coaching process with us, our punishment, instead of running, I don't ever remember running with him. But I remember we did a tremendous amount of planks. Like a ridiculous amount of planks.
Oh, yeah.
So we would do planks and then laying on your back and lifting both legs at the same time. So a bilateral leg lift, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to hold it for however long he felt was appropriate at the time, which I think the lowest point may have been a minute, which is very consistent with what we coach now.
There's something to it.
So we were on to something there at a very early age. And I'm pretty sure I could still plank with the best of them. I wouldn't be surprised if I could plank for 3 or 4 minutes to this day, because that was just what we did. And
you did it well.
And it was definitely, for me, it was like, people were dropping like flies all over the field, but I don't know, there's something about kind of developing that self-discipline that I'm going to do it and I can hold it and we can get it and get that mental toughness was always what he was preaching too. Like, can you how long can you sustain? How long can you push? But those were the 2 drills that we did, and I'm not condoning leg lifts as the right tool, but the plank for sure was stood the test of time. It was a good deal.
We did some bad ones. You guys ever heard of laying track? They would call it laying track in college. We did this. I'd never heard of it until I got to college, but when something went wrong, everybody would lay face down, spread a couple feet apart along the first baseline in baseball. Person on the far end towards home plate gets up and has to run over everybody. So take your spikes off, obviously. But you run over everybody, so you have to jump basically bounding in bare feet all the way to the end of, you probably have a 35-man roster or something, including maybe, the guys that are redshirting or whatever. And then you lay down and the next guy does it. And then he would progress that when he was really pissed to us. Everybody would be holding a plank while everybody's running over to the end. You'd have to do laps. You're laying track. You do laps around the field. You say, we only got 2 laps today, boys. It's no big deal. I'm like, what? And your calves would just feel like they're going to burst by the end of it. I'm like, I feel like we're definitely working. You said working on the right thing. We were working on the wrong thing.
That's definitely a Russ drill, jumping over everything.
Man, see, I'm loving every second of that right there. Because that's got that fear and excitement when you're the last guy. Like, come on, you got to make it, you got to make it.
Yes, there is definitely something to that. There's definitely something to the team component of that. I buy the team building portion, but maybe we can choose better drills in the future.
Oh, man.
That's a good idea for our next team building exercise on our own team.
Why not?
Yes.
Could be fun.
Fully support that.
In spikes.
Yeah. Sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah, really. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you guys have historical training things you've done in the past or things you did growing up that stimulated your career or where you're at now, it'd be really cool to hear what you went through and what you've learned. I know one thing we hear constantly from parents today's day and age is, we're working with some kid and their dad or somebody's next to them, like, God, I wish I had this when I was a kid. They didn't have anything like this, and I think it's so true. But I think we did have some good stuff when we were kids, especially like maybe when we were kids, Evan, you're a little bit younger, a little bit more immature on this concept. But this idea of there's really self-development, having to own your position and own your own performance was really prevalent with us for sure. And that's nothing to say to people that were in the generation before us, where there was no access to tools or resources.
Right.
In the Hoosiers days and such, But nonetheless, love to hear you guys' stories, to share with us on social media and let us know. It'd be great to see what different perspectives you have and what things you did to get great, to make it to where you're at now. So, thanks for listening to KIMEcast. This was KIMEcast. and we are the KIME Human Performance Institute. Thank you very much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Please hop on our social media. It's at KIMEHPI and engage with us there. If you'd like us to feature a topic or answer any questions live on the show, post your comments there. You can also check us out on our website at KIMEperformance.com, and there you can see links to content that we've posted throughout our podcast for more information.